prioritize economic acceleration, the economic transformation in the aftermath of this pandemic?
So I think there are several things that have been happening. I think the objective isn't so much to fast forward as much as it is to ensure that we continue a measured, healthy pace to pull ourselves out of where we were. And whether it's financial in nature, which is sort of the immediate reaction, there are also several regulatory changes that the government has put in place to help facilitate as best as possible. I think lives and livelihoods are very interconnected nexus. And so as much as the government has looked very consciously in ensuring that our health and well-being and our behavior changes as we live with this virus, which we're going to all have to live with for a while, we're also ensuring that we can still run our businesses and keep our people employed and continue to provide positive impact in our community and our society. So there needs to be as it has been in this country, a very strong public health, but also public policy and economic policy put in place as well. And that's been, I think, very reassuring to the general public and to business owners that there's a conscientious understanding of where we are at the moment.
Minister, you have spent years of planning Expo, and I wanted to perhaps just get you to take us back to that moment. You start seeing the headlines that the pandemic is making its way around the world, and in particular it's coming towards Dubai. Was there ever a moment in time when you thought Expo might not go ahead?
There were many moments. But I'd just like to mention that the postponement of the Expo was not a UAE decision. The same way the hosting of the Expo wasn't a UAE decision. We had to take commentary from member states back to another vote. Many people don't realize that we had to get another vote to postpone the Expo. What's incredible about that, though, is we got all the votes we needed in 4 days. We got 2/3 majority of the General Assembly of the International Bureau of Expositions in 4 days during the pandemic.
Wow.
And that was when, at that time, Europe was the hotspot. They gave us 5 weeks to collect the votes, and we got it in 4 days. And it's not so much about we being able to do it. This is a testament to the belief and the conviction that the international community has in Dubai, in the Expo, and in the UAE. So they knew that we would be able to deliver something, and they also believed that when we did and when we would deliver that, it would be phenomenal for everyone involved. And I think that, for me, when that decision came through, it was a massive sigh of relief, because even with my own teams, there was a lot of anxiety. Should people still continue working for an October 2020 deadline if there's a pandemic? Or should we start delaying our plans? Do we still procure this several million dirham contract, or should we delay? And in the business of Expo, you can't delay anything. And I kept telling my teams again and again, as of now, we are still hosting in October. Forget about what's happening around the world. As of now, we're still hosting. And that mindset has been, it's been difficult. But reassured by the international community, again, 2/3 majority, country votes, can you imagine? You can't even vote because you can't go in to vote, so you have to write out a note verbal and send it officially. Those were tough, but they happened in record time. And like I said, it's a testament to how much people believed in Dubai and how much people believed in the Emirates, and our track record of how we managed and are managing the pandemic, and then also how special Expo, inshallah, is going to be.
So next October, it's just going to be so fascinating to see how this is going to look as well, because it could very well be the first mega event that's going to be held around the world post-COVID. So tell me about some of the work that you've been doing over the past few months to ensure it's a success, and what's changed and what's going to stay the same.
So it's funny because everything's changed, but many things are still the same. Connecting minds, creating the future around some themes that matter to the global community under the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainability, opportunity, and mobility. The power and the use of technology as an enabler, as we have seen, a digital expo, which we've been planning, which will become far more prominent during October next year. Many of these tenets, you see, Expo was always about purpose, people, and planet. And today, these three find themselves even more so in need of one another and reinforcing one another. And so when we think through the design of the Expo, for instance, we are putting in place the elimination of queues, more social distancing. We're limiting the number of people who could be in, let's say, the Al Wasl Plaza. So our operational plans have new guiding principles, which are going to be more pre-programmed and more pre-curated in nature. We are still, however, going to be talking about the things that we always planned on talking about, and somehow they sound a little different now, because it seems a bit more visceral and a bit more intimate and much more real. Because when today we talk about human solidarity and hope, as you heard earlier, it sounds a little bit more, you can relate to it a little bit more than you would have 2 years ago, which was also when we were saying human solidarity and hope. And this is, again, remember, the Expo will be happening in the year of the Emirati Golden Jubilee. So we would have our 50th during the Expo time. And think of it in the context of much larger things. All the countries in the world present talking about the importance of connecting with one another to solve global issues collectively and collaboratively. At a time when we are celebrating, at a time when we're just becoming 50 years old in a difficult region. And to talk about issues like water resource management, and to talk about how AI and how technology can be and is being deployed for good, and then focusing it down to the person and their well-being and their health and their mental state and their interactions with others. All of these are coming into play during the 6 months of Expo next year.
So some of the themes have been revised, some of the themes have been updated. Tell me a little bit about whether you think people will actually come, though. I think we think very differently about big events now, and this is a point of example. Are you confident that people will come in October next year?
I mean, look at people here. People have come here, and we're still in the midst of it. I do believe people will come. Alhamdulillah, by next October, things will hopefully be a lot more managed than what we're currently living through now. But we're also not taking anything for granted. So we're preparing different options for folks to be able to enjoy what the Expo has to offer. And I think for us, it's less about looking at the number of folks that walk through the gates, but the depth of the experience that people have. I think that, and I believe very strongly, that what we've put in place, the themes that we're going to talk about, and the tone that we're going to strike is really going to resonate with folks.
And I was out on the site just a few months ago. It looks absolutely fantastic. And what's also interesting to me is that the building hasn't stopped throughout this period as well, right? It's continued on.
Yes, Expo is 90% other countries. We have our own quote-unquote buildings on site, like the beautiful Al Wasl Plaza, Terra, which is our sustainability pavilion, which will become a science museum in legacy, the opportunity pavilion, mobility pavilion. But otherwise, it's supposed to be other countries. So other countries have been building. And again, in the midst of their own domestic challenges, you see the Luxembourg pavilion moving, you see Austria, you see so many beautiful architecture come into play. But also, the kinds of conversations we've been having with them virtually has been quite fascinating as well. Because you are talking to someone in the Caribbean who says, well, we haven't really gotten COVID at this point, and then you have someone in Italy who, again, in the midst of the pandemic is struggling, and then Emiratis in the UAE all in our masks, whereas others are not even mandating masks yet. It's proven, though, that you can, through technology and through a responsible use of technology, proper deploy and properly unlock the opportunities that exist. And everybody's asking about their families, everybody's asking about how you're dealing with homeschooling or with being a teacher and a parent. Those are the commonalities we never thought united all of us, but we have so much of that in common.
Your Excellency, just finally, as we move forward from this point on, what would you like the legacy of Expo to be, and how has that changed? How's your thinking changed on the legacy of Expo over the past few months?
So I think that the technology component of the Expo has really, the technology component of the Expo has really come to the floor a lot more strongly. We are a 5G site, and we've already deployed AI and smart buildings across the site. We have amazing partners like Siemens, who through MindSphere, one of their programs, have been able to create an integrated system that interfaces with the physical realities on the ground. But I think that when I say technology will be more prominent, what I also mean is the interface not only between building and technology or systems and technology, but also how humans react to their own biological data points. I see folks monitoring their heart rate variability a lot more now. In fact, in Expo, 3 years ago, do we have time, Dan? Like another 1 or 2 minutes? Because that's kind of about to flash. Oh, it's flashing actually already. So just really quickly, a few years ago, the Expo started with a program called WHOOP. And WHOOP is a wearable that we deployed with our construction workers. We deployed it at around 10 to 15,000 construction workers to just see how we can monitor and see their sleep recovery, their heart rate variability, and also the level of strain that they undergo during a traditional workday. And as we've collected this data, so here's a very real example of AI and technology. We've begun to understand a couple of circumstances that can significantly affect health. Things that you wouldn't really realize, but sleep recovery, for example, has a massive strain on the heart if the sleep recovery hasn't been well done. As we've taken all of this data and we've matched it with what we've been doing on COVID on site, whether it's PCR tests or serology tests, we've really begun to realize that a stronger and better understanding of your own health, mental and physical, has a significant implication on your overall well-being. It sounds like it's, really super common, but actually you'd be surprised how many people are unaware of how their own bodies are performing. So this is a very small but very real example of how during Expo and post-Expo we will be using technology and data and an integrated approach to it through platforms in artificial intelligence to better tell the story to others, but also to ourselves, about how to live meaningful lives.
Your Excellency, there are so many fascinating things happening in the lead up to Expo, and we are so thrilled that you are here to share them with us. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.